First, I'm in the insurance industry. Nobody plans to get in the insurance industry. That's just, nobody does it on purpose. I had worked in the financial sector. I had an insurance license. And when that job ended, I was like, what am I to do? Like, I had no idea.
Welcome back to the Untrapped Entrepreneur Season 2. As you all know, this is about being married and owning a business. Dan has experience in both. In fact, Dan LaBroad has experience in running Ovation Health and Life Services. I'm now a happy client. We'll talk about that on the episode. A partner at Vaccine Administrators, Velvet Athletics. We'll also talk about that. So this whole moving from health insurance to pickleball, Dan, is kind of similar to me moving from insurance to the hair business 15 years ago. Makes no sense. So I definitely want to hear about that. And Texas Health Coalition, he's an owner over there as well. But season 2 is about being married and owning a business. But for those of you that don't know about Dan, give us, I mentioned a few of these businesses here, but give us a little bit of your entrepreneurial background to start.
Yeah, first, I'm in the insurance industry. Nobody plans to get in the insurance industry. That's just, nobody does it on purpose. I had worked in the financial sector. I had an insurance license. And when that job ended, I was like, what am I to do? Like, I had no idea. And I'd had an Aflac policy, and I said, well, you know what? I like Aflac. It's worked for me. So I think I'm going to go try to sell this to businesses. And that kind of brought me into the insurance world. I had a lot of clients. I was a top producer for Aflac in the state of Texas, one of the top account openers in the country. And my clients started coming to me saying, hey, can you do our health insurance? Can you do our dental, our vision? I'm like, sure. And again, no experience, just kind of winged it and did it. And, now 17, 18 years later, here we are. Now we're doing large clients. We're doing self-funded health plans, risk management, taking a different approach to benefits. Our goal is always better benefits, lower cost, and breaking employers away from the status quo of Blue Cross, United Healthcare, showing them how they can actually take control of their healthcare, offer their employees better benefits without stripping away benefits and lowering the costs. You've experienced that, but there's a lot of options out there. And I think our industry is very status quo. And especially in the older brokers that have been around a long time, it's the way it always has been. And it's not. You can have so much control and give your employees such a better program nowadays than you ever could. But you have to be willing to take that risk. And we're helping employers do that.
Wow. And so when did you start Ovation? Was that 17 years ago?
Yeah. So I was the Aflac guy. And I was known as the Aflac guy in South Dallas. Especially I did a lot of business in Cedar Hill and Duncanville in that area. But then when I started doing the health insurance, they still kind of thought me as the Aflac guy. So I had to create Ovation to kind of separate the two. And then that's where that grew from. And Ovation was actually the name of a company I owned before that. So we had made the logo and the name. I held on to it when that company disappeared. I said, well, I'll just make it work. Yeah. I already had the logo and I had I spent the money, graphic design. I was like, all right, this is great. And it stuck. And so we've used that ever since. But yeah, that was we registered as a corporation back in 2006. So yeah, we're looking at 17 years.
That Ovation story reminds me of Randy DeWitt. I don't know if you know Randy.
I know Randy. Yep.
Okay. So I'm asking Randy years ago. Randy is the founder of Twin Peaks, Whiskey Cake, Ojos Locos, Legacy Food Hall, Mexican Sugar, 60 Vines, the Ranch in Las Colinas. I mean, you name it. Amazing restaurant in the Dallas.
Rum Burner restaurants. They're amazing.
Son of a Butcher. I mean, this guy's got like every hot restaurant that comes out. But I was asking Randy years ago about the story of opening Twin Peaks, and he founded Rockfish, and he said he was going over to have a beer at Hooters across 35, looking over at Rockfish, and Rockfish was not doing well, and so he needed to pivot, and so he's like, I hated the food here at Hooters. The beer could be colder. And he's looking at his Rockfish across the street, and he didn't have enough money to create a whole new concept, and so he borrowed everything from Rockfish, look and feel. And that first Twin Peaks was kind of a Rockfish feel. Yeah. But it kind of carried through, like even the color scheme and everything like that. So
I never thought of that, but yeah, that's interesting. It did. That's funny.
I don't even know if he wants that story out there, but yeah, Just so you know, if you think Rockfish and Twin Peaks look similar to each other, there's a reason why for that.
Well, Randy's supposed to be on my podcast coming up, in hopefully in the first quarter. But he and I have been emailing trying to schedule a date, so hopefully he'll be on there next year.
He's awesome, man. Well, you guys need to check out Dan's podcast. I didn't mention that, so tell us a little bit about your podcast too before we jump into some of the marriage stuff.
Yeah, well, you've been on it. That was one of my favorite episodes, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Ovation Show was started. It really was supposed to be a library of content regarding employee benefits. So I was bringing on CEOs of health insurance, different plans and people and solutions we're using within our health plans. And that was the first library for the first 2 years. But I realized I know so many amazing people like yourself in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I said, instead of just focusing on health insurance, I want to focus on these great people that are doing great things with their companies, that are supporting their community, that are treating their employees well. And that's where I kind of focused on that going into last fall. So, I've had people on like Dan Hunt, with FC Dallas and Kansas City Chiefs. I've had you on, Nick Kennedy, we just talked about. Mm-hmm. I had Jason McCann from Very. Mm-hmm. I had Osa Odigizua from the Dallas Cowboys on, talking about his foundation. We had some amazing people on, Lawrence Mann with Top Achievers Foundation, and we're going to continue that this year.
That was awesome. It was a great experience, class act, professional. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so you've been in business 17 or so years. How long have you been married?
18. I think we're going on 18 in February.
I'm not going to ask you the anniversary date. I don't get you in trouble. You gotta check your calendar reminder.
Exactly.
I had to do that, by the way. I'm not even gonna lie. Like the anniversary.
Actually, I remember more than she does. So,
well, we had a funny thing happen where it was our 5th anniversary, and we're driving, I think, from Dallas to Houston, and I don't know who looked at who, but we're like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot our anniversary." And the good thing is, we both forgot it. And that's so good. That was, it was like 3 weeks after. So it was really helpful. But yeah, put in, this is your first tip for today. Just put the wife's birthday in the calendar, put the anniversary in the calendar. You're sure to never forget it. Okay. So married a significant amount of time. Kids, how many kids do you have?
Yeah. 2 kids. One just turned 16. So we're working on that driver's license right now. And the other one is 12. And both boys, both go to in Plano ISD. One's at Shepton High School. The other one's at Renner Middle School. Just great kids. Both play soccer for FC Dallas. Plano West lacrosse for the older one. And then they're just great kids.
That's awesome, man. Well, let's talk about where you first met. And then I'm always curious about this because I don't know if you were like an entrepreneur right when you met, or if you're entrepreneurial minded, but I'm always curious if there was any like disclosure made of like, hey, my brain works differently. I'm kind of crazy. I'm an entrepreneur. If there was a disclaimer, if you found that out later, or she found that out later. But tell us a little bit more about the origin story with your wife.
Yeah. So, I used to go out a lot, and I had a buddy of mine that we used to, we partied a lot, went out, we were on Lower Greenville. And there was one day where everyone lost. I lived down near Lower Greenville. And one day the power had gone out. Everyone lost electricity, including Lower Greenville. But we all ended up on Greenville having beers. I think it was Hurricane Grill. They had everything on ice. So they had the doors open. Everything's on ice. So we went down there. We're having drinks. And I saw some girlfriends I knew, talking to them. And then my buddy was talking to some other girl. And we're getting ready to leave. Well, I ended up talking to my wife at the time, Haywan. And we didn't really know each other. So we were just chit-chatting. And no intent of like, hey, I want to go out with you or anything else. She had gotten a new puppy. I had a puppy. And we're like, hey, we should get the dogs together. She was just looking for a play date for her dog. And I'm like, yeah, the dog park's right across the street from my house. We should get together. So that was the whole intention when we first started talking. I did think she was attractive and I liked her, but I wasn't really thinking about dating or going after her. And then for about 3 months, we talked on the phone. We actually never got together with the dogs, but we talked. And eventually I asked her out, but the funny part is I didn't have any money. So I would have asked her out sooner. I was broke. I just started doing Aflac. I had no money. Here's this girl with all her stuff together. I'm like, how am I going to take her out? So eventually when I closed the deal, I got that paycheck and I took her out to, we went out to dinner, had our first date, and that was pretty much it. We went from there, but it was, we always say we even wrote and we did this wedding album and we put in the story, the night still, went out in Dallas and we talked about the dogs what brought us together.
Oh, that's
So
funny. That sounds like the beginning of either a bad or a good joke. Is like, a man, a woman, and two dogs walk into a bar.
walk into a bar.
Yeah. It turned
That's
out
funny.
great. It turned out great. Did the dogs ever meet? Eventually, they did, right?
Well, yeah. Then they became, of course, best friends, and they lived together for 16 years. They both mine. We had to put mine down about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. She was old. She was like 16,
Hmm.
and then my wife's dog passed away like 2 years ago.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, we asked you a question about is your spouse part of your business, and that was an entertaining answer. You said no, we would kill each other, and she probably wouldn't
yeah,
approve of my style, spending, and more. So,
yeah. Very different. She doesn't even want to be her own boss. She's talked about she's a very talented and achieved architect. And there's times where I said, go out and do your own firm. You have all these people and you could be very successful at it. But she doesn't want to run. She doesn't want to be a business owner. She doesn't want to run her own business. She doesn't want to be part of mine. I
mhm.
really don't want to. We probably be at each other's throat with decisions I make or the things I think. With her advice, I would probably not want to listen to.
Yeah. How do so with everyone's in a little bit different situation. Some have their spouse like intimately involved in their business. So the Hari Mari folks, the sandal company,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and shoe company, I interviewed both of them, and they're in it together, like every day, all day.
Yep.
And then you have other situations where you're either just a little bit into it or not into it at all. So, how do you bridge that gap between like you taking on all of the burdens and excitement and stress and the highs, the lows of entrepreneurship without, how do you kind of go through that without her maybe understanding, everything that's going on in the business? Do you try to open up intentionally and say, hey, I'm stressed out, had a bad day, this is what happened? Or does she just know? How do you kind of bridge that gap?
That's a good question. It's always been tough for years. I just kind of kept her away from the business anyways. I just didn't want her involvement. And I've had to intentionally work to get her more involved, or not really get her involved, but just to be more vocal about what's going on and share more with her. I still don't share a ton. And I've found, we talk about relationships and being, honest here. There are times where, yeah, I'm in a bad mood. I've had a really crappy day or I'm really stressed and it'll come out at dinner. I'll snap or I'll have a bad attitude with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, and I have to go, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Cause she'll yell at me and get mad. Why are you saying that? Why are you saying it like that? I'm like, I'm sorry. I've had a really bad day.
You're like,
So it
Ben
is,
Davis came to me with this insurance problem, and I've got to get it done in 48 hours.
yeah, that was actually easy and fun. But no, there is, you're dealing with problems and you get stressed and you have a lot of work on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
And you can easily bring it home. And I think of that story or analogy, you hear it everywhere, is where they say, when I come home, the guy would stop at the tree outside his house and he would hang his jacket and his hat on the tree. And that was his work stuff. And he would leave it there and go in the house. And that was his way of saying, I'm leaving my work stuff outside.
Mm.
And then he would focus on the family. I don't necessarily get to do that. I work 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
But that happens because, as a friend of mine, Red Boswell says, my work is my life is my work. They're so intertwined. There isn't a separation of business and work or business and family life. So if I'm at the kids' soccer game, I'm on my phone doing emails and trying to get stuff done. But with my wife, it's tough because you're trying to get them involved. There's a lot of involvement she doesn't even want to know. She just wants to make sure you're doing things right and that there's a paycheck coming in and that you're building the business and growing the business. But I have gone to her, I think in the last few years, more advice from her.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm quick to react.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, I'm less the guy to sit and think about things and how should I respond to this? What should I do? I'm just like, nope, respond. And she's like, you can't do that. So she's really good in that controlled and thought process. And I've learned to go to her on those things and ask for her advice. Hey, read this email first before I send it. She'll tell me, you can't say that. I'm like, but I want to. But she's a busy executive. So there's her career is very demanding, probably more than mine, I think. And so we've learned to kind of, give each other space. When she's had a really bad day, I let her vent and we kind of give each other room and understand that, hey, we're really stressed right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to let go of things though. My rule is it'll be there tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it used to be. I would stay up till 2 in the morning and work all night and then get no sleep. And I'm miserable with no sleep. And we'll get 4 hours of sleep and then be cranky the whole next day. And I realized, the client really doesn't need it right away. They say they do, but they don't. And I just say, it'll be there in the morning when I get up, and I'll just work on it in the morning. And I've learned to let go, and just say it'll be there tomorrow. And that's helped me a lot, especially that evening stress.
That's a huge trap that I want to talk a little bit more about too. Is that I found early in my career in the insurance business, I was over a partner at Goosehead Insurance, the fifth employee there, and I remember, 21-year-old kid promising the world to my clients because I didn't want to lose a client. I wanted to close the deal. I wanted to be the best I could be. I didn't want to let anybody down. And I found myself promising everything that I possibly could. Call me 24/7. Here's my cell phone. I'm always available, right? And I learned very quickly, because the business was growing rapidly, that is completely unsustainable for me to do that. And I still see that to this day with entrepreneurs who are incredibly successful financially, is the lack of boundaries that they put in place. And it's like, if I ask you a question as a customer, it doesn't necessarily, and I ask it to you at 11 o'clock at night, it doesn't mean that I'm expecting for a response at 11 o'clock at night and a solution at 11 o'clock at night. That may be just the only time I had to send something out. And so just asking that question, even if you're up on your phone, is it okay if I get this to you by Friday? Oh yeah, no problem. Get it to me next Friday, not urgent. But one of the things that we've done in our business, I don't know if you've implemented this at all, did this years ago, the important urgent matrix. Are you familiar with that at all?
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, Nick Kennedy talks about it too. Yeah.
Oh,
In
really?
his
Okay.
leadership stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a lifesaver for us. So even with your spouse, just, hey, not urgent, not urgent, but can you let me know when the your kid's basketball game is, tonight or tomorrow or Friday or whatever. Hey, not urgent, important but not urgent. But just putting that little qualifier in to let the other person know, don't sweat it. You don't need to get back to me right away, especially when the other person on the end of the line is a pleaser, which I class myself as a pleaser, a people
Yeah.
pleaser. It takes some discipline, but it does take some weight off when they proactively know how to communicate with you. I know you're a pleaser. You don't need to do this right now.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's you mentioned something about that 24/7 always being on, and that's kind of how I am. I believe in responding right away. Again, not necessarily, hey, I'm going to do it right now. I do, and even our staff we train. If you get an email from somebody, just say thank you, I got it, so they know you're working on it. You don't have to finish it right there unless it's really urgent, but just let them know you got it, acknowledge it, and then you do it when it needs to be done, and go from there. But turning it off, and I learned I trained clients early on before I even had a team when I was a single man shop. I trained clients inadvertently that just text Dan at midnight. He'll take care of it. He'll get up out of bed and go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, he'll respond at any time. It's early in the morning, late at night, and and I inadvertently trained them that I was always on. And even to this day, I'm still kind of that way. I've gotten a little better at it, but you realize clients, they learn that. Hey, you're always available. You made yourself always available. And now I expect you to always be available.
And then when you try to make that turn, now it's like, well, what's wrong? You used to
Yeah.
respond to me, right? So it is
Your
important.
service has gone downhill. You're not available at 11 o'clock on a Sunday.
That's right. All right. Well, take note of that, listeners, that, a trap you can avoid, or if you feel like you're in it now, is you can turn the ship a little bit, more slowly if you need to, by putting something out there and saying, hey, I've hired a team. I've hired a virtual assistant. I need to, I've carved out some time in my day for creative thinking time to move the business forward, to think about how to better serve you. Is like, message out to your clients, I am adjusting how I do business to better serve you. And better serve you may mean you're not going to get a response right away, because maybe I reply back with, like a half-ass answer. And if you gave me 24 hours to think about it, I could be more thoughtful and give you some better advice. All right. So going back to you and your wife, and just being married in the business, we had asked you about some lessons from your marriage that you brought into work, and vice versa. So you already mentioned kind of this thinking twice before hitting send. Hey, can you help me look this over? A trusted advisor to help look over some of your words. Anything else that you've either learned in your marriage life, either through counseling or coaching or spiritual work or anything like that, that you've brought into your business, or business processes you've learned, maybe establishing company values, how you treat people, anything like that that you've taken from business into marriage or family life, especially with the kids? Anything come to mind there?
Well, I think one, I mean, and been a battle in the past, is I would treat my clients better than I was treating my wife.
Hmm.
I was, as she said, you're nicer to your clients than you are to me, and I didn't realize that.
Hmm.
And that was a big thing because I was always, again, being stressed and working and doing stuff. You bring that home, or it's in the home if I'm working at home. Um, and I would kind of, that stress I would take out on her. Not necessarily, I wasn't mean, but I just wasn't nice. And she always said she married me because I was a nice guy, and she knew that I would always be nice to her.
Hmm.
And that really hurt me that I wasn't being nice to her when I thought I was. And then when she sees me talk to clients and talk to vendors, and she says, "Oh, you're much nicer to them than you are to me," that really hit me.
Hmm.
And so it was kind of like I either, I should always be nicer to her than I am to anyone else.
Yeah.
And so I had to really look at how I was treating other people versus her and so on. And I think that goes into that honesty thing, us being honest with each other. And that's not always easy either, because I just kind of keep everything internal, don't really say a lot. And so I've had to really work on being more honest and open with her. She's very honest and open. Like, she'll say if it's on her mind, she's going to say it. She's going to say everything she's feeling. And I'm more, just kind of nod my head, and I don't share as much. I'm working on all of that. But it's tough when you both have busy careers and you're both living your work all the time, because she comes home and she still will work at night and she's got a busy career. So it's a tough situation.
Do you guys have a date night or a specific period of time where you both kind of just it's set in the schedule, or that you do regularly to try to reconnect?
Not really. And we've tried that. It gets tough with the kids' schedules and ours. But like last night was an improv. Last night was a good example. We got an email from Glen Eagles Country Club. They're doing a tequila tasting and 4-course dinner. And we're like, you know what? We didn't have any, we didn't have piano. It got moved. There were the kids' lessons. Kids didn't have anything. We're like, you want to go to that? Yeah, let's
Mm.
go. And so we went, and there was 12 people in this dinner, but we had a nice 4-course dinner and enjoyed each other's company and learning something, and having that date night, which we don't have that often. Um, Trying to squeeze that in. A lot of times it could be just sitting on the couch at night, each of us, get a tea and watch a movie together.
Hmm.
But we're trying to do more of that, but it is hard with the kids' schedules when you got 2 kids playing multiple sports and schoolwork and piano lessons and violin lessons and, tournaments and travel. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's something we need to work on. I think that would strengthen our relationship, and we need to make that time.
Well, it's Wednesday night, or it's Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday night is date night for us. It's on the
Nice.
calendar, Dan. So that's the thing, man.
Yep.
It's not one of those things where I'm trying to impress her or myself with remembering something, but used to be Tuesday night years ago. We switched it and Tuesday night was like half price wine night at the local restaurant at our old house. I haven't had anything to drink in the last year.
Yeah.
And so we switched from Tuesday nights to Wednesday. But I do recommend that. It's different for everybody. I don't meet too many people. I meet hardly anybody that has like a standardized on the calendar date night. But for us, because we've got 3 kids and multiple businesses and everything going on, to your point, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
We will talk about something. Let's do this today at 2 p.m. It could be 11 a.m. If it doesn't make it on the calendar, it's very likely that we both miss it, because we're just kind of, that's like our single point of truth. So I would recommend, just from my own personal experience, trying to get something on the calendar. If you're a calendar person, I would recommend that. It's been life-changing for us. And sometimes, you know what, honestly, we're in a fight or something, we don't want to go, and I'm like, it's on the calendar. We
Yep.
got to do it. And we just force ourselves to make that happen. So,
Well, I think, and two, finding the time. I mean, it's really hard, but we found. I'll give you a simple example. We had the kids were they have a church thing, so we drop them off at the church. We have like 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're like, "Well, do you want to run over to Steve Fields and have an appetizer?"
mm-hmm.
And we go there and we listen to the piano player, have a glass of wine and an appetizer, and just spend a little bit of time together. And we try to get in, we try to get a walk in once a week, and we'll go for a walk for half an hour, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for us, it's trying to structure it it's the schedules are so tough, but we still try to build it in when we can and find those little, 1 hour windows to throw something in there.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I found in my work life is that I put a few years back, maybe 5 years ago. I know I read this somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but I put creative blocks on my schedule. So it just says like creative block. And I'll have that a few different times in the week where like no other meetings can go in there. But we're at our best as entrepreneurs when we have time to sit back and think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can all probably agree that, these ideas that we've had that transformed our business, changes that we've made that were significant, it was in a time where we actually had time to think and maybe write things down. And so I've been really diligent about that. There's a few different times of the week where nothing else can touch it. And those are transformative for me. So just another kind of maybe untrapping there of if you feel like you've got some creative blocks. All right. So real quick on optimizing marriage and business ownership, you shared a few things. I want to mention those, and you can fill in some gaps here. You said learn what marriage truly means before getting into one. Find a role model. That was very meaningful to me when I read that because my dad married and divorced 4 times. My mom married and divorced 3 times. Lauren's parents married and divorced multiple times. Her grandparents were married and divorced 3 times to each other, to the same people, right? So, which that's a whole nother, like that could be a whole nother conversation in episode. Learn to be honest and truthful from the start. Recognize that you will fail at both, and learn 4 simple words. You're right. I am sorry. So hard though, man. So hard to say that.
Yeah.
Tell me more about any number of those, including the "you're right, I'm sorry." I mean, it's tough for me to say that.
Yeah. It's, I didn't have a role model necessarily growing up for marriage. I mean, my dad wasn't around a lot. He was in and out of jail. He was gone, missing. I mean, it wasn't really there. So, my mom pretty much took care of us. So I didn't have that family dynamic to see that good, solid marriage. And I really didn't have anyone else I followed on that. I did meet a couple in college who I became almost like a son to them. They had a really good marriage. And that was the first example I saw of how that worked.
Hmm.
And they're still really close friends of mine. They're the longest friends I've had. I mean, I've known them over 30 years. They were a really good example to learn from. And in fact, Rick is the one that told me, well, I remember this. It was in a grocery store and I was dating a girl back in Tulsa and I thought, oh, I might get married. This is in my 20s. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, you have to learn 4 words. You're right. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That's carried with me forever after that. I probably say it more often than I should. But that's hard when you don't have that example. And I think that's one of those things that I still struggle with because my wife will say, if we get in a fight about something, she'll say, what does marriage mean to you? And I honestly, it's hard. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do know. I know what I believe it is and what I think it is, but I can't sit there and say, well, it's this based on what my family did and my parents did and what other people do because I don't have those examples. So that has always been a struggle for me. Mm-hmm. So I do think, having a family, whether it's your family or another family or people you can look at and talk to model after is really important. And I've learned like with Nick, especially, in our leadership cohort, everyone's very open to talk to their marriages. And I realized when we're fighting or we're battling with our spouses or we're having difficulties, we're not alone. Mm-hmm. And I think so many people feel like, oh, everyone else is so perfect and their marriages are wonderful. They're not struggling like I am. Well, guess what? Everybody is. It's a very tough thing to be married.
Yeah.
I mean, and I believe in lifetime partnership. I don't believe in divorce. I waited till I was in my 30s to marry her. I will work and fight through all of that, to make sure we last and stay together. And I think so many people quit too early, mm-hmm. And they quit because it's easier to do that.
Yeah,
no I question. Think you need to fight through it and you need to share. But again, having that role model, find it, whoever it is. And if you don't have that marriage role model, find someone or another couple as you get older that you can talk to about it and be open with. And that was really important because I also realized when I'm having problems in my marriage or I'm upset with my wife, I didn't have anyone to talk to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the people close friends, If I talk to them, well, he treats his spouse very differently than I would treat mine, or the way he runs his family. I'm like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. Because in his house, like in my good friend of mine, he's the dictator in his house. His wife stays home. They're not, in my opinion, they're not really a true partnership.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't that. Whereas we're a partnership. We work together to make the best, to do the best we can. Um, you have to find those people you can talk to, bounce ideas off, bounce complaints off, get good advice. And that goes into business too. Everyone can give advice, but make sure you're getting good advice.
Throw my dad under the bus. I don't know if he'll listen, this far into an episode, but yeah, he's and I love my dad to death, but getting marriage advice from someone who it didn't work out over and over again, or business advice from someone where it didn't work out over and over again, is probably not the best person. But I will say that when they're giving advice, telling you of their failures and what they didn't do and what they regretted not doing or regretted doing, there are a lot of lessons learned through someone else's pain if they're willing to share that. And so I think there is, regardless of who is giving you advice, is finding some wisdom in both of those. But I think for me, it was a blessing actually to see the pain of divorce happen over and over again, knowing what it looked like, what it felt like, and me not wanting to have to put my kids through that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of really purpose driven for me. And if you don't have somebody, I mean, look, if you're part of a local church, whatever denomination it is, most of these churches have like biblical principles around marriage. They have marriage support groups. There's so many resources. And I think the church is underutilized in that aspect. We're trying to get on Instagram and buy a $29 course on how to fix your marriage when the church is down the street and
Mm-hmm.
is ready and willing to help. We're going to take a commercial break here, but Dan, I want you to think about one thing. I'm sure there's many moments, because if you've been married this long and running a business this long, but a moment in time where like you thought it was all going to fall apart, that had to do with, the business, not necessarily, anything, personal outside of the business, but, any moments where the business is doing poorly, it affected your marriage. You thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to go and I've threatened this to my wife. You want me to go get the bank job and work 9 to 4:30? Is that what you want? Just tell me. I'll get online and I'll apply to Wells Fargo. At any moment in time when then that happened, just kind of how you dug out of that and any lessons learned from there. So think about that. The Gent Store. Dan knows about the gentstore.com, and the gentstore.com is going to have some of Dan's pickleball products soon from Velvet Athletics. So Dan I imagine you're probably a good pickleball player, but I want you to tell the story here in a second on that during this commercial break. But the Gent Store is a site we launched recently where you can shop over 3,000 items and earn 20% back in annual membership credit if you are a member at the Gents Place. If you're not at the Gents Place yet, or there's not a Gents Place in your area, it's still an amazing store to shop at. You're going to find $1,000 luxury leather travel bags to coffee and pickleball and everywhere in between. So go to thegentstore.com, use Untrapped as your promo code for free shipping. We're going to have Dan's products on there. Tell us a little bit about Velvet, and then hopefully by the time this episode airs, we'll have your products on there.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so I had a friend of mine, good friend of mine. I see him all the time, and we had a friend who is a U.S. Open grand champion, gold champion in the wheelchair pickleball. So he won a huge tournament. He's well known. And we were talking about paddles one day. We were talking about pickleball and paddles, and he said, "Yeah, I'm trying to find the right paddle. I need one. I'm trying to play in the wheelchair. It has a shorter handle." And he started talking about complaints about it, and like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And this conversation broke out like, "Why can't we just create our own paddle?" Pickleball craze. And so then my buddy John and I started talking about it. Started doing some research. Reach out to manufacturers in China, and kind of going through the whole process. We said, "Oh, let's do this." We did some demos. We brought some paddles out. We had Chip play with a few of them, made some structural changes. And next thing you know, we have a functional Velvet Athletics paddle, the Hammered. And then we just got our United States Pickleball Association approval. It's been approved. So now, they can be used in tournaments around the country. But it's a great paddle. Chip's playing with it. He started the wheelchair pickleball association as well. But it's not just for wheelchair players. It's a great all around paddle. In fact, we had someone use it recently in the world record longest pickleball game at Brookhaven Country Club during the big tournament that was there. So she was using our paddle. We've got tournament players all around the country using it now. So it's been
Wow.
great. It's something totally different. I'm in the retail manufacturing space, but it's been a lot of fun.
So your paddle was in the world's longest pickleball game? Was used in?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That needs to be
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been on the site recently, but that needs to be marketed. We'll be marketing that.
Yeah. Now that we have we've been kind of holding back doing a lot of marketing because we had to wait till we had our pickleball association approval.
Mm-hmm.
And now that the paddle got approved on December 1st, just last week, now we can start doing a lot of marketing, sending videos out and a lot of stuff from different events and things we've done.
Wow, that's awesome. We can't wait to have them on the site on thegentstore.com. Okay, I've given you a couple minutes to think here. Just unpack any of that. And for those listeners that are just like, this is it, I'm done. I'm going to go get the job, the job at Wells Fargo. My marriage is going to end. Everything's toast. You have one of those events, and then how did you get out of it?
I've had several of those events, but I'll go back to probably quite a while ago. The business was doing great. We had some really big kind of clients. There were some unions we were working with, and we were writing a lot of business with in voluntary space, making a lot of money and doing really well. A lot of great growth. And so I was spending money too. Mm-hmm. So I was getting it. I was, season Mavs tickets and eating out, and I was spending more money and living kind of high in the hog, paying myself a decent salary. And then we lost those clients. The union had leadership change, and we lost that. And so the money kind of stopped coming in on those. And I kept spending. And I put some debt, credit card debt. And my wife has never had debt in her life. She doesn't believe in paying interest other than on the house or a car. She's never had credit card debt. And suddenly I racked up $40,000 in credit card debt. I still had some student loans I was paying off. And it really put a strain on it because I realized I did not take care of that. I fell behind on taxes because of that. I mean, all of that came in, and suddenly we really could have got divorced over that. Mm-hmm. And that's when I learned I had to put my head down, work. And again, I was like, I got to pay this off. So do I either give up the business and just go get a job so I can get everything done, or do I just work harder and take care of it? And that's what I did. So, and she was behind me. She's like, you need to get to work, either go get a job or start working harder. Mm-hmm. And so I went through, and within a year or two, I had everything paid off, had everything done. The business grew because of that. That I don't want to say motivation. It was basically either I'm losing my wife and my business, but that was a motivator to kind of really get it together and fix all of that. And then from that point on, I've never had debt since then. The company's never had debt. And I work and live it that way. If we can't afford to do something, we don't do it. Mm-hmm. But it was really tough, and having to change that mentality. And so even with Velvet Athletics, going into that, it's like, okay, we're putting money into this, but it's bootstrapped. We're not spending money. We're not out doing a lot of advertising and sponsoring events because we don't have the funds to do it right now. Mm-hmm. I don't want to fall into that hole again that I had. That was 15 years ago. But you learn from that. And again, it could be, those kind of things can wreck your marriage. I mean, what's the number one reason for divorce? It's financial.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you said earlier, I think is really important. The assumption that you had was like, I'm going to make this marriage work. Like, I don't believe in divorce. I'm going to make this work. And so if that is if that's a fixture, that's not going anywhere, then it causes you to change everything else but that, right? Yep. People where that's the variable, where it's like, well, I'll just delete the marriage and I'll keep doing whatever I'm spending or whatever I want to do. So I think just sounds pretty simple, but if you're going to get married, and make sure that you are just as committed to not getting divorced. And that's just not, I had a life coach years ago, and he taught me this phrase, not one of my available options. Yeah. And that's one of those things where not one of my available options. I'm not going to touch it. Not going to think about it. I've got to change something else in my life.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thank you so much for hopping on the show and sharing the real stories of entrepreneurship. You know, I say that I think in my show trailer, it's not the three tips to get rich, how to buy your first Ferrari type of show. There's all kinds of stuff out there, and you can scroll Instagram and find that. But talking to real people, going through real things as a married couple, and I think people need to hear that that authentic story. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Where can we find you? And let me give a quick plug, real quick. My insurance went from around $1,300 a month for my family to $4,300 a month on my renewal, and I desperately was searching for a solution. I found Dan, and Dan actually got my insurance less than $1,000 a month for the family with better coverage. We can't promise that for everybody. I know, historical doesn't predict the future, but that was a life changer for us, business changer. We had just signed up for 100% health insurance payments for our 5+ year team members. So thank you for that. Super grateful for it. And I want people to know about your primary business. They'll find Velvet on the Gent store. Don't worry. But tell us where we can learn more about Ovation and get connected with you on the insurance side of things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our website is ovationlife.com. So there's information you can connect that way. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So definitely go to LinkedIn and look up Dan LaBroad. That's the easiest way because I run everything through my personal account there. Feel free to look at anything. Send me a message on LinkedIn and happy to get back to you.
Awesome, man. Thank you again for coming on the show, and we will catch you guys next time.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.